The night I heard a man tell my CEO she was too old to be loved was the night everything in my life changed. Her name is Victoria Hartwell. She owns Hartwell Systems in downtown Chicago. I am Marcus Bennett, the quiet guy from computer security on the 6th floor. I fix firewalls and chase hackers. I am not the kind of man who changes his life in one bold move. But that Thursday night at Riverside Cafe, I did. I was sitting alone near the back window with my laptop open, pretending to work on security updates. The truth was, I did not want to go home. My apartment felt too quiet these days. 2 years ago, my girlfriend left me. She said I was too safe, too boring, too predictable. She compared me to plain oatmeal. "Nobody gets excited about oatmeal, Marcus," she told me while packing her bags. Since then, I had gotten used to eating dinner alone. The bell over the cafe door rang and every head turned. Victoria walked in. At work, she wears sharp suits and heels that click across marble floors. People straighten their backs when she enters a room. But that night, she wore simple jeans and a soft gray sweater. No makeup, no power smile. She looked tired. Not normal tired. The kind of tired that sits deep in your bones. She chose a booth in the back corner, far from the college kids laughing near the front. She put her phone face down on the table and wrapped both hands around a cup of coffee like it was the only warm thing left in her world. She stared at nothing. I had worked at Hartwell Systems for 5 years. I had seen her close $1 million deals without blinking. I had seen her calm down angry clients with just a few steady words. But sitting there in that booth, she looked small, human, alone. A man in an expensive navy suit walked in and headed straight for her table. He did not smile kindly. He sat across from her without asking. I tried to look back at my screen, but something in my chest felt tight. At first, their voices blended with the music. Then his voice grew louder. "Let's be honest about where you are in life," he said. Victoria's shoulders stiffened. "You're 48 years old," he continued, leaning back like he was teaching a lesson. "That's too old for any man who has real options." My fingers froze above my keyboard. "Successful men want younger women," he said. "Women in their 30s who still look amazing and can give them children. You can't compete with that." Victoria did not move. She kept staring at her coffee, but her hands tightened around the cup until her knuckles turned white. "And younger men," he gave a cold laugh. "What 30-year-old man wants someone pushing 50? They want to build a life from the start. You're past that." The cafe noise faded. All I could hear was him tearing her down piece by piece. "You're stuck," he said, standing up. "Not young enough to matter. Not old enough to stop caring. My advice? Get a couple of cats and learn to be alone." He threw cash on the table and walked out. Victoria stayed frozen. The world kept moving around her. The espresso machine hissed. Someone laughed loudly near the window. A phone rang behind the counter. She lifted her coffee with shaking hands and took a careful sip like nothing had happened. But I saw it. The crack in her calm mask. I knew that look. I had seen it in my bathroom mirror after my girlfriend left. The look of someone who has heard the same message so many times they start to believe it might be true. You are not enough. I closed my laptop slowly. Every smart part of me said to stay seated. She was my CEO. This was private. This was not my business. I could lose my job for crossing lines. But I was tired of staying quiet. Tired of watching good people get hurt while everyone pretends not to notice. I stood up and walked to her booth. "Miss Hartwell," I said softly, "are you okay?" She looked up fast. For 1 second I saw real pain in her eyes before her professional mask returned. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "I'm fine." "Thank you." "No offense," I replied, my heart pounding, "but you don't look fine." The words hung between us. She studied me like she was seeing me for the first time. Not as an employee, not as a name on payroll, just as a man standing in front of her. "I suppose I'm not," she said quietly. I slid into the seat across from her without asking. Bold move for someone who usually plays it safe. I heard what he said. I told her. He was wrong. She gave a small, tired smile. You don't have to defend me. I'm used to it. That's the saddest thing I've heard all week. Her eyes flickered. He was just being honest, she said, though her voice trembled. Maybe it's better than pretending. There's a difference between honesty and cruelty, I said. What he said says nothing about your worth. It says everything about him. She looked at me carefully. Why do you care? Quote, because I saw myself in her. Because I knew what it felt like to be told you were not exciting enough. Because I watched someone hurt you, I said. And I couldn't pretend I didn't see it. Silence filled the space between us. Not awkward, just honest. Do you come here often? She asked after a moment. A few times a week. My apartment gets too quiet. She nodded. I live in a house with 5 empty bedrooms. It feels like being a tiny marble rolling around in a huge box. That made me smile. Marcus, she said softly. That's your name, right? Yes. Thank you for sitting down. We talked for over an hour. About work, about loneliness, about how success does not protect you from feeling invisible. She laughed once, really laughed, and it changed her whole face. I found myself watching the way her eyes warmed when she smiled. I should have left. I should have kept distance. But when we finally stood to leave, something in the air felt different. Outside, the Chicago night was cool. Streetlights reflected off the river. She hugged her sweater tighter around her shoulders. Good night, Marcus, she said. Good night, Victoria. It was the first time I had ever called her by her first name. And I knew, standing there under those streetlights, that walking to her table had just changed everything. 3 days after that night at Riverside Cafe, the company servers crashed at 3:45 in the morning. My phone exploded with alerts before I was fully awake. Critical breach, system failure, customer data at risk. My heart slammed against my ribs as I threw on jeans and a hoodie and ran out the door. Downtown Chicago was still dark when I reached Hartwell Systems. Only one car sat in the executive parking lot. Victoria's. Of course she was already there. Inside the building, the lights felt too bright against the empty halls. I hurried to the server room and stopped. When I saw her standing outside it, phone pressed to her ear. She was still wearing yesterday's navy suit. Her hair was pulled back tight, but loose strands framed her tired face. Yes, I understand your concern, she said calmly into the phone. We are handling it. Her voice was steady, strong, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. When she saw me, something softened in her eyes. Marcus is here, she said into the phone. I'll call you back. She ended the call and stepped closer to me. How bad? She asked. Bad, I admitted, but not impossible. For a second, she just looked at me, not as an employee, not as her security analyst, just as Marcus. I trust you, she said quietly. Those 3 words did something to me. I walked into the freezing server room and got to work. Screens flashed red warnings. Code lines ran like chaos across the monitors. My team started arriving one by one, faces pale and stressed, hours blurred together. Typing, testing, failing, trying again. Outside the server room, I could hear Victoria's voice rising and falling as she handled call after call. Investors, clients, board members. Around noon, I stepped into the hallway to grab coffee. I froze when I heard a familiar voice. You've lost your edge, Victoria, one of the board members said sharply. This company needs younger energy, fresh ideas. Younger. The word hit me hard. This has nothing to do with age, she replied calmly. It has everything to do with perception, another man said. Image matters. I stepped back into the server room before they saw me. My chest burned. They were doing it again. The same message from the cafe. Just dressed in business words. Too old. Past your prime. Not enough. By 8 that night, I finally traced the issue to a corrupted update that had spread through our system. Fixing it meant rebuilding sections of code from scratch. Victoria appeared in the doorway holding a bag of takeout. You need food, she said. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. But she still stood straight. "How bad is it upstairs?" I asked. "They're discussing leadership changes," she said quietly. I stopped eating. "Because of this crash?" "Because of everything," she replied. "They think I'm not what the company needs anymore." Anger rose in my chest. "They're wrong." She gave me a tired smile. "You sound very sure." "I am." She sat down beside me instead of across from me, close enough that I could feel her warmth in the cold room. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you so certain?" "Because you show up at 4 in the morning during a crisis. Because you defend your team instead of blaming them. Because you built this company from nothing." She swallowed. "You see more than most people," she said. "Maybe most people don't look." Quote. Her hand rested near mine on the desk, not touching, just close. Silence filled the space between us, but it felt different now, charged. "I keep thinking about that night at the cafe," she admitted. "About what you said." "What part?" "That hearing something over and over doesn't make it true." I turned to face her fully. "It doesn't," I said. Her eyes searched mine, not guarded, not distant. "Marcus," she whispered, "do you think I'm too old for love?" The question felt fragile, like glass. "No," I said firmly. "I think the right person just hasn't been brave enough yet." Her breath caught. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she leaned forward and kissed me. It was not soft or careful. It was sudden and desperate and real. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. "That was reckless," she whispered. "Probably," I replied, "but I don't regret it." "Neither do I." We went back to work, but everything had changed. Every glance felt deeper. Every word felt heavier. At 12:30 in the morning, the system finally stabilized. Green lights replaced red warnings. My team cheered. I walked upstairs to her office. She was standing by the window overlooking the city. "Well?" she asked. "It's fixed." She let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped for days. Then she walked toward me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "You saved us," she murmured. "We saved it," I corrected. She pulled back slightly but kept her hands on me. "This can't happen again," she said softly. "The crash?" She shook her head. "This." The space between us felt thin. "I'm your CEO," she continued. "You report directly to me if anyone finds out." "They will talk," I said. "They always do." "And if the board already thinks I've lost my edge?" I understood what she was not saying. "If they think I'm weak. If they think I'm desperate. If they think I'm clinging to youth." "Then we give them no reason to question your leadership," I said. "We keep it professional at work." "And outside of work?" she asked. I stepped closer. "Outside of work," I said, "we figure out what this is." Her eyes shone in the city light. "You're younger than me," she said quietly. "I know. Does that bother you?" "No. It should," she whispered. "It doesn't." She studied my face like she was searching for doubt. "You could have someone younger," she said. "I don't want someone younger." Her breath trembled. "Marcus," she said, almost afraid, "what if this destroys my career?" I took her hands in mine. "What if it saves your heart?" She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was something new there. Hope. "Dinner tomorrow," she said softly, "not as CEO, an employee." "As Marcus and Victoria," I replied. She smiled, and for the first time since that night at Riverside Cafe, she did not look tired. She looked alive. For 2 weeks, we lived in 2 worlds. At Hartwell Systems, she was Victoria Hartwell, CEO. Calm, sharp, untouchable. I was Marcus Bennett from security. Professional, focused, careful. Outside of work, we were just 2 people who had found each other at the wrong time in life, and somehow the perfect time, too. We had quiet dinners at small restaurants across Chicago where no one knew us. We walked along the river at night, talking about things we had never told anyone. She told me about building the company from a tiny office with peeling paint, about working 14-hour days while everyone else her age was getting married and having babies, about watching friends drift away because she never had time. "I kept telling myself I would focus on love later," she said one night as we sat on a bench near the water. later never came. I told her about my ex, about being called boring, about wondering if being steady meant being forgettable. She squeezed my hand. "Steady is rare," she said. "Don't let anyone make you ashamed of that." But even in those quiet moments, reality waited for us at the office. The board scheduled a private meeting with her on a Tuesday afternoon. I did not know what was said, but when she texted me that evening, my stomach dropped. "Need to see you after hours. Important." By 7, the building was almost empty. I took the elevator to the executive floor with a tight chest. She was pacing when I entered her office. "They want me out," she said without greeting. The words felt like a punch. "What?" "They said the company needs new energy, younger leadership, a different image. Younger again. They're using the server crash as an excuse," she continued, "and they hinted about rumors." Rumors. I felt heat rise in my face. "I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" she asked. "For making this harder for you." She stopped pacing and looked at me with surprise. "You didn't do this," she said. "They were questioning me long before you. But now they have something to point at." She walked closer. "I will not let them turn you into a regret," she said firmly. "Do you understand me?" My heart pounded. "They're voting tomorrow morning," she continued. "If they decide to replace me, it will be immediate." Fear crept into her voice, even though she tried to hide it. "What can we do?" I asked. "We show them the truth." For the next 10 hours, we worked side by side. I pulled financial reports, growth charts, security metrics, customer retention numbers. She built a presentation that told the story of 15 years of success. At 3 in the morning, she rested her head in her hands. "I'm so tired of proving myself," she whispered. I moved my chair closer. "You don't have to prove yourself to me," I said. Her eyes met mine. "That's the problem," she replied softly. "You see me clearly. They see my age." I reached for her hand. "I see strength. I see loyalty. I see the woman who showed up at 4 in the morning to stand outside a freezing server room because she believed in her team." Her eyes filled with tears. "You make it sound simple," she said. "Maybe it is," I answered. "Maybe love is simple. People just complicate it." The word love hung between us. She swallowed. "Marcus," she whispered, "if I lose this company tomorrow, everything changes." "Then we face it together." She studied my face carefully. "You would stay?" she asked. "Even if I'm no longer CEO, even if I have nothing impressive to offer you?" I almost laughed. "You think your title is what I fell for?" Silence filled the office. "What did you fall for?" she asked quietly. "The woman who sat alone in a cafe and tried not to break in public. The woman who still shows up strong even when people try to tear her down. The woman who laughs like she forgot how beautiful her own smile is." Her breath trembled. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know." "Not of losing the company," she continued, "of losing you." I moved closer until our foreheads almost touched. "You won't," I said. She kissed me softly this time. Not desperate, not reckless, just certain. The next morning at 9, we walked into the boardroom together. They looked surprised to see me. "Mr. Bennett," the chairman said, "this is a private meeting." "He's here because I asked him to be," Victoria replied calmly. For the next 40 minutes, she presented every number, every achievement, every proof of leadership. I watched the board members shift in their seats as the truth filled the room. When she finished, silence followed. One of them cleared his throat. "Perhaps we were too quick to question your position," he said carefully. "You were wrong," she replied without raising her voice. "And I will not apologize for getting older while building your wealth." The room went quiet again. After a long discussion, they withdrew the motion. She remained CEO. When the meeting ended, we were alone in the hallway. She let out a shaky breath and leaned against the wall. "You did it," I said. "We did it," she corrected. Then her expression changed. "This doesn't fix everything," she said softly. "The gossip will get worse now." She was right. Within days, whispers filled the break room. Conversation stopped when I entered. A note appeared on my desk that read, "Climbing up the ladder the easy way." I crumpled it in my fist. That night at her house, she sat at the kitchen table staring at her phone. "They're calling me desperate," she said quietly. "Pathetic, saying I'm trying to feel young again." Anger burned in my chest. "You are not desperate," I said. "You are in love." She looked up at me. "You really believe that?" she asked. "Yes." Quote. She stood and walked toward me slowly. "I've spent years being admired," she said, "respected, feared, but never chosen." I stepped closer. "I choose you," I said. Her eyes shone. "And I choose you," she whispered. For the first time, the fear in her face faded. But deep down, I knew something. Love was not the hardest part. Proving to the world that it was real would be. The whispers did not stop overnight. If anything, they grew louder. People lowered their voices when I walked into the break room. A few coworkers stopped inviting me to lunch. Someone sent Victoria an anonymous email calling her desperate and pathetic. I saw the message on her screen one evening when she forgot to close it. She tried to act like it did not matter, but I could see that it did. One night, we sat in her living room, the city lights glowing through the tall windows. She looked smaller somehow, even in that big house. "Maybe we made a mistake," she said quietly. "Maybe I should have protected you from this." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "I'm your CEO," she replied. "People think you're only with me for power, or that I'm clinging to you because I'm afraid of being alone." I moved closer to her on the couch. "Let them think what they want," I said. "They don't live our life." She studied my face like she was searching for doubt. "You're younger," she said softly. "You could have an easier life, no rumors, no judgment." "I don't want easier," I answered. "I want real." Her breath caught slightly. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed hard in my hand. Security alert. Someone was trying to break into our customer database. I stood up fast. "Stay here," I said. "I have to go." The next 12 hours were chaos. A hacker had found a weak entry point in one of our older systems. It was not a small attack. It was planned. If they had gotten through, the damage would have been massive. I worked nonstop. Coffee went cold beside me. My team moved around in panic. I focused on nothing but code and patterns and defense lines. By early morning, I blocked the breach and traced it back to its source. The threat was stopped. When the news reached the board, their tone changed. Again. This time they were not questioning leadership. They were praising the security team, praising me. Victoria called an emergency meeting and publicly thanked my entire department. She did not take credit. She did not shift blame. She stood tall in front of everyone. "This company is strong because of the people in it," she said, "and I am proud of every single one of them." After that, the whispers started fading, not completely, but enough. People began congratulating me instead of watching me. They saw results. They saw work. They saw that nothing about my promotion had come from anything except skill. A month later, I officially transferred to report under the technology director to remove any conflict of interest. Human Resources signed off on it. The board approved it. We followed every rule. Still, some people looked at us like we were breaking an unwritten one. 8 months after the night at Riverside Cafe, Victoria stood in the doorway of her bedroom holding 2 coffee mugs. "You spend more time here than at your apartment," she said carefully. "I guess I do." She handed me a mug. "I don't want you to feel like a guest anymore," she continued. "Move in with me." There was no dramatic speech, no big plan, just her standing there, hopeful. "Yes," I said before she could second-guess herself. Living together felt easy in a way nothing else ever had. My books filled her shelves. My shoes lined up beside hers near the door. My coffee mug sat next to hers every morning. She worked long hours. So did I. But at the end of the day, we came home to each other. One Wednesday afternoon, the technology director called me into his office. "We're promoting you to lead security architect," he said plainly. "This decision is based on performance alone." I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady. "Congratulations," he added. When I told Victoria that night, she smiled wide and proud. "You earned that," she said. "I know," I replied gently. "And so do you." 1 year after that night in the cafe, I bought a ring. I had planned something perfect: candles, music, a rooftop view of the Chicago skyline. But life does not wait for perfect. We were sitting on the couch on a random Thursday night. She was wearing sweatpants. I was half asleep. She looked at me suddenly. "I want to marry you," she said. I stared at her. "That was supposed to be my line," I said. She laughed, and I reached into my pocket. I had been carrying the ring for weeks. I got down on one knee right there on the living room rug. "Victoria Hartwell," I said, my heart racing. "You are the strongest and most beautiful woman I know. Not because of your title, not because of your success, but because you never stopped standing up even when the world tried to push you down. You taught me that steady is not boring, that loyalty is not weakness, that love does not come with an expiration date. Will you marry me?" She was crying before I finished. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." We got married 9 months later in our backyard. 80 people, close friends, family. No fancy ballroom, no big show, just promises. During the ceremony, she stood in front of everyone and said something I will never forget. "I spent years believing I was too old for love," she said. Then a man who barely knew me walked across a cafe and reminded me I was enough. When it was my turn, I took her hands. "I spent years believing being steady meant being forgettable," I said. Then I saw someone hurting and decided not to stay silent. We danced under soft lights as the stars came out above us. She rested her head against my shoulder. "Thank you for walking to my table that night," she whispered. "Thank you for letting me stay," I replied. People once said she was too old. People once said I was too boring. They were wrong about both of us. We were not too late, we were not too much, we were exactly on time. And sometimes, all it takes to change your whole life is the courage to stand up and walk across a room.